डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब आंबेडकर ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी.
Namaskar. This is Jayjit Trivedi welcoming all of you from the Chaitanya studio located at the Jyotirmay campus of the Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University, Ahmedabad. Today we are going to discuss MJMC paper number 2, that is Understanding Media, Mass Communication and Journalism. Reminding all of you that we are discussing Unit 2 and today is Part 9 of the sections, right? So, first of all, let us discuss what we have learned till today, right? We have learnt about contribution of the New York Herald and New York Times in the field of journalism, then beginning of style book in the newspaper writing, right? We have discussed in brief about what is a style book and how it is impacting newspaper writing, right? So, what is a style book? Style book is a style wherein you would use grammar and punctuation and salutations all are equal among all the newspapers. This is a style which each and every newspaper follows, right? Then starting of first graduation course in Columbia University with the financial support of Joseph Pulitzer, who started Pulitzer Award, which is given, and I had given one homework to you in the last lecture that name some of the Pulitzer Award winning journalists from India, right? How wars changed the course of journalism? This also we have discussed in brief, that how World War I and World War II impacted the course of journalism. Then starting of wire services for news and birth of Associated Press. Today we will further discuss these things, which is section 4, modern journalism in 20th century. So, we last discussed about starting of wire services, right? What is wire service? That is message sent via telegraph, right? I had told you that you should ask your grandparents that what is telegraph, right? Telegraph used to be a service which used to use for communication before even telephones came into existence, right? So, this was this first service which was used to pass on the information or news, right? Now, let us discuss what is wire service. The concept and execution of the first wire service was led by David Hale, right, who was also publisher of the Journal of Commerce. In 1858, news from Europe was transmitted to America through transatlantic cable, right? One cable was laid in Atlantic Ocean. Now, if you see the geography of the earth, Europe is located on the one side of Atlantic Ocean and America, North America and South America are located on the other side of the ocean. In between these continents, only Atlantic Ocean is there, nothing comes in between, right? So, a cable was laid in the ocean which connected Europe to America. This was laid in 1858. This cable and this technology evolved how humankind communicated with each other, and it gave birth to wire services. Now, wire or news agency is a platform that hires reporters at various locations and gathers news from one of the spots, right? The wire agency hires news reporters to report at one spot, right? And this reporter transmits the same to the subscribers of the newspaper and even government officers, private companies against pre-decided charges. Now, let us discuss in brief that what the process was. The wire company would hire one reporter. Let us take an example that the reporter is hired in America. Let us say New York. Now, reporter will report about happenings in New York, right? And he or she will transmit this news through wire, which is laid in the Atlantic Ocean. Through wire, the information will be sent to Europe, right? Now, in Europe, when the receiver receives this information, what he or she will do, it will disseminate this information, same information, to different newspapers, different companies, and even government officers, right? So, now what is happening here is wire services hire one reporter and so many newspapers take benefit of that report. So, it is very cost effective in a way, right, that all of these newspapers need not to hire reporters in USA. One reporter will report about the happenings and will share this news with all the other newspapers. Now, small newspapers or even leading newspapers who would not able to afford or send reporters to remote places or foreign countries gained access to news from other parts of the country or continent due to wire services or news agencies. Now, these wire services or news agencies who used to work for newspapers, right? They would write for the newspapers and would give news directly to the newspaper, and they would publish that in the newspaper, and eventually readers would get the news, right? So, these were the services which was very benefited for the newspaper owners, especially small newspapers, right? So, the expenses for recruiting a reporter or sending him or her to remote places or other country, other continent was reduced significantly, and they started spending on printing technologies. That's how newspapers evolved. This is and the task of newspapers facilitating the coverage of events, incidents, accidents, tragedies or natural disasters. Now, take an example. If one natural disaster has happened at one place and the country has, let's say for example, 100 newspapers, they all send one reporter to the place where disaster has taken place. Now, imagine the chaos. What would happen? 100 people are going at one place which is already damaged and reporting about the damage from different aspects. And now imagine one thing, that all of these hire one or two people and send them to the location, and these one or two or four people would report back to newspapers, and all of them would print that news story, right? This is what news services or news agencies or wire services used to do. Now, New York Herald, this is one of the pioneer newspaper. You need to remember the name. Was not only the first newspaper to hire reporters and assign them to cover beats, but was also the first newspaper to take initiative and lay down the foundation of investigative journalism, right? Investigative journalism. Now, this is a word which is often used for journalism. What is investigative journalism? Investigative journalism is a form of journalism wherein the reporter investigates one story in detail and in depth. These stories are generally of the nature which are hidden from the people at large, and generally these stories are meant to be kept hidden and not to be seen by the people because they are malicious in nature, right? Can be a financial scam, can be a political scam, all of these things are kept hidden from the people at large, and investigation journalism or role of the investigation journalist is to give information to people and to reveal all these things, that these things are happening, and make them aware about what is hidden, right. Post writing about slave women and how they were stabbed or shot dead, David Livingstone himself went missing, right. David Livingstone was a journalist who used to write for New York Herald, and he wrote about slave women and the happening with slave women, right, and he went missing. So what New York Herald and the editor did, instead of just reporting about David went missing, what he did was he sent James Bennett in search of David, right. James Bennett was sent to search David, and while searching David, what he did was he filed a report. He wrote about this story in the newspaper, right, and he interviewed him, right. So Henry was successful in locating David in Uganda. This successful investigative reporting encouraged Bennett to employ more investigative reporters. This is how investigation and investigative reporting started. So this is how investigation journalism got room and space in modern day journalism. Got it? Now let us see some of the examples of investigative journalism. Bofors Expose. This was one of the first investigative journalism happened in India, and which was very much talked about, right. It was the first time corruption became an intensely public and political issue. Bofors Expose was a public and political issue back then. The scandal was uncovered mostly by The Hindu. It is name of the newspaper, Hindu. And who reported this scam? It was Chitra Subramanian and Enram. These two reporters exposed the malintention or malpractice in Bofors, the purchase of Bofors, right. This was a tank that was supposed to be used for defending India, right. Then from the picture we can see that 1992 stock market scam that was done by Harshad Mehta. This is also one of the most talked about investigation journalism story, right. A series is also made from this story. This was done by Sucheta Dalal. In the series also you can see that one journalist, lady journalist Sucheta Dalal, was present in the series as well, right, and the newspaper was the Times of India. This was first of its kind financial investigative reporting, right. So this is how investigative journalism was done. If investigative journalism thrilled newspaper readers, stories of human interest were also touched by many hearts. Now, what is human interest story? Human interest story is a story which you read and your heart comes out, right? Stories which have love, passion, compassion in the story, right? These are the stories which people used to love and still love to read. The first human interest stories were reported and published by Charles Anderson in the New York Sun. Again, we are discussing some of the names of the newspapers. You need to remember what is New York Herald, what is New York Times, now New York Sun. These are three newspapers used for different things, right? This legacy of human interest story is being inherited by modern days print, radio, electronic and digital media as well. Now, let me know in the comment box whatever we see in form of reels or stories on Instagram, on Facebook or any of the other social media handles, what are they? They all are human interest stories, right? So, mention those things. That do you watch these human interest stories in social media as well? Do you read about social interest stories in newspapers? Mention that in comment box. It attracts a wide range of readership. Now, if I am reporting about business, let us say for example business, people who are interested in business story only would read that story, right? If I am reporting about crime, so people who are interested in reading crime stories would read that, right? If I am reporting about sports, people who are interested in sports would read my story. But human stories are such wherein each and every person will have an interest. So, these stories are widely read till today, and it was established earlier that apart from gossip, human interest stories are the stories which attract more and more readership, right? So, this was used by not only print but radio, electronic and digital media, and it is still used by them, right? So, today we will keep it to this only. In next lecture, we will further discuss about investigation journalism and human interest stories. Till then, namaskar.